Today, we will tell you a story that took place during the Black Decade, considered the darkest period in Algeria's history during the 1990s. This incident occurred precisely in the Ben Talha neighborhood, the most terrifying night of that era. The story was recounted to us by people who lived through those events, and we will narrate it in their own words so you can experience the details as they did. Many details remain untold, and we will continue to share more horrifying stories from that time, including dangerous accounts told by eyewitnesses. Honestly, these stories may change your perspective on who was truly responsible for what happened. On one of the worst nights in Algeria's history, specifically Monday, September 22nd, 1997, around 11 p.m. or 11:30 p.m., I was asleep when we heard chaos erupting outside our neighborhood. Suddenly, gunfire rang out, followed by a powerful explosion that shook the area. Terrified, I hid under my bed as the entire house trembled, windows shattering. I could hear neighbors screaming in the alley, people fleeing toward rooftops. A voice shouted, "They're going to slaughter us today!" The attackers were terrorists. Out of nowhere, a woman rushed into the room, yanked me by the arm from under the bed, and yelled, "Hurry! Let's run! They've broken in!" I asked, "Who?" "Who's here?" She replied, "The terrorists." My younger siblings and I hid under the kitchen table. I asked her, should we run or stay? She said, "There's nowhere to run. The gendarmerie is outside. We stay here." Many neighbors fled their homes and took shelter in a public bathroom near an old military barracks. In that moment, it struck me that this was a premeditated terrorist operation. Despite having survived previous attacks, I had never felt such fear. This time, I sensed something unimaginably evil was about to unfold. Screams grew louder and people cried out, "God, save us!" Then the power went out and smoke began seeping into the house. I told the woman, "Maybe the security forces will come," but she replied, "Recite the Quran in your heart. What God has written will happen." Gunfire erupted again, then abruptly stopped. I realized the army had arrived. We heard our elderly neighbor shouting curses at the terrorists. They shot him dead instantly. Then they began pounding on our door, screaming, "Open up, Fatiha!" Our neighbor, Ashur, lay bleeding from a gunshot wound. The woman tried to stop the bleeding with coffee grounds and dust while praying for him. At that moment, the terrorists tried climbing onto the roof. Ashur hid near the staircase while we stayed quiet. The sound of a military helicopter thundered overhead, and soldiers stormed the roof, engaging the terrorists. They rescued us and evacuated the area. Outside, I saw horrors: burned bodies, mutilated corpses, and homes reduced to rubble. By morning, we returned to find the neighborhood surrounded by soldiers and police collecting victims. The events of that night in Ben Talha will forever haunt the memories of those who lived through them or heard the stories. We pray for peace and stability in our country. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel as we continue to share shocking stories from the Black Decade that will reshape your understanding of history.